Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and thanks for watching. Another busy docket, so let's get right to it. First, why we always give everyone the presumption of innocence. Things are not always as they seem. Second, the officer who shot Rayshard Brooks charged with felony murder and a surprise twist. Third, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell going to get their 15 minutes of fame. Fourth, sentencing in the Tessa Majors case, and her parents are not happy. A big bust of 16 social deviants. Fifth, a big bust of 16 social deviants in Florida. Sixth, attorneys making poor choices. And finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch from Crime Talk, and thanks for watching. As always, we're going to ask, if you have not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put out new content. And as always, leave us a comment below on the cases that we discuss. First on the docket, why we always give everyone the presumption of innocence. That's right. Not everything is always as it seems. Now, I was maybe even a little harsh on this matter, but as you may recall, the other day we talked about the case of Dustin Denis. He was a 31-year-old man, father of two. He lived in Oklahoma, and he was charged with the death of two of his children. The police originally believed that he left the children in a hot car where it was some 90 degrees and they ultimately died. According to Mr. Denis, he told the police that he had taken the children to a convenience store, returned home, went inside to take a nap. The kids were to remain in the house. He woke up, found the children in the car, brought them into the house, and immediately called the police. The police obviously didn't believe his story and said that he had neglected the children. As it turns out, surveillance footage from a neighbor's cameras showed that the children got into the vehicle themselves and ultimately passed away in the car. Dustin Denis, who had been arrested on 2 counts of murder, had been released as of now. And I admit I was a little harsh saying, hey, if you can't have the responsibility of children, don't have them. Obviously, Mr. Denis was innocent of harming those children in any way. I would still think that some could possibly charge him with neglect and the fact that he was taking a nap when a 5- and 4-year-old were running around and obviously getting into a dangerous situation. I think the prosecutor probably made the correct decision by not going forward with any further charges, knowing that this father has suffered enough and will literally beat himself up for the rest of his life. You may recall the Heidi Broussard case that we talked about several months ago, who was the mother who went missing, and her child went missing as well. A lot of people were very suspicious of her boyfriend, Shane, because he didn't present well on the camera. He was nervous. Not everyone is very good at public speaking, and if you've actually looked at any lists of biggest fears people have, public speaking is in fact one of them. As that case turned out, I was one of the few people that said, let's give him the presumption of innocence, let's wait and see. As it turned out, Megan Firamuska, one of the best friends of Heidi Broussard, had in fact killed her, put her in the trunk of her car, and taken the child as her own. Ms. Firamuska is still under a competency evaluation, and that case is pending. But it clearly shows why we have to give the people the presumption of innocence. Not everything is always as we think it may be. Next on the docket, the officer who shot Rayshard Brooks in Georgia has been charged with felony murder. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this particular case, Rayshard Brooks was at a Wendy's drive-thru last Friday night. He was allegedly passed out. The employees at the Wendy's called the police because they could not arouse Mr. Brooks from his alleged drunken stupor. When the police arrived, did what most police officers would do given those set of facts, and engaged in a DUI stop. Mr. Brooks appeared relatively cooperative throughout the process until he was being placed under arrest for investigation of DUI. At that point, Mr. Brooks began to pull away and was not going to be handcuffed. And as we've seen from body cam videos as well as surveillance footage, there is a scuffle on the ground between two officers, specifically Garrett Rolfe, who's been charged with felony murder, and Devin Bronson, who's been charged with aggravated assault. Ultimately, Mr. Bronson breaks free, runs away, and if you've seen the video, he turns back around towards the police officers and fires the taser that he had in fact stolen or taken from the police officers. At that point, now former officer Garrett Rolfe fires 3 rounds, 2 striking Mr. Brooks in the back, whereupon he bleeds out and dies. Needless to say, the following evening there were protests regarding the death of Mr. Brooks, and individuals set fire to the Wendy's, destroying it and taking away all the jobs for the employees. They were basically doing their jobs that evening and simply asked that the police come and take care of this particular situation. As it turns out, Mr. Brooks had previously been sentenced to prison and was on parole. For those of you who are familiar with the parole or probationary system, if you pick up a new law violation and that is sustained or you're convicted of it, your parole or your probation could be revoked and you could go back to prison. Certainly a reason why Mr. Brooks would want to dash away. However, the police officers knew the name of the individual, they had his car, and he didn't live far from there. It certainly doesn't seem to be a situation that would warrant shooting a man twice, as it turns out, in the back. Now, Mr. Rolfe's attorney has something different to say about that. Officer Rolfe's attorneys issued a statement today stating that the officer feared for his safety and that of others around him and was completely justified in shooting Mr. Brooks. Rolfe opened fire after hearing a sound like a gunshot and saw a flash in front of him. And as we have shown you, the video clearly shows what I was a little unclear, but clearly it looks like the taser was shot at the officers, and obviously a taser looks very similar to a firearm. Mr. Rolfe's attorneys go on, state that Mr. Brooks violently attacked 2 officers and disarmed one of them. When Mr. Brooks turned and pointed an object at Officer Rolfe, any officer would have reasonably believed that he intended to disarm, disable, or seriously injure him. Now, what is the significance of that language? That's the language that's going to be in the jury instructions that we talked about yesterday as it relates to the law, where police officers can, in fact, shoot a fleeing felon. Obviously, the crime was assault on a peace officer, disarming a police officer, all felonies. This case is not going to be as simple as one may think for the prosecutor in this particular case. But there is a twist in this particular case. The officer who was also there, Devin Bronson, he's being charged with aggravated assault and a sundry of other charges because apparently he was putting his foot on Mr. Brooks' shoulder while he was basically laying on the ground waiting for medical personnel to arrive. It was also revealed today that now former officer Garrett Rolfe kicked Mr. Brooks when he was on the ground, something we've seen a lot of recently and something that I have seen and heard a lot about from clients over the years. When they've been arrested, they get a good kick to the body or to the face. And this twist comes because Officer Bronson has apparently decided to give testimony against his now former officer Rolfe. Why is that significant? Well, we have mentioned this before, all right? This is a fundamental principle. The threat of imminent incarceration tends to break the bonds of loyalty. Before, police never had any real culpability or exposure to going to prison. Up until the last 25 days, before George Floyd passed away, basically this would have been an internal investigation and it would have been resolved that the officer was completely justified. Now you have 2 officers pointing fingers at the other. Officer Bronson thinking, I don't want to go to prison. I didn't shoot anybody. So let me protect myself. The threat of imminent incarceration tends to break the bonds of loyalty. And that is the one way to break the thin blue line. Once they have to start dealing with their own self-interest, they will start getting rid of the bad cops. We will continue to follow this case because it is not going away anytime soon. All right, before we proceed with the docket, let's take a quick recess. Now, we have been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. A sponsor, People Finders. You can get a detailed background check on just about anyone here in the United States, and for a small subscription fee, you can do that. Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com and type in a name, search, pay for a subscription, and guess what? When you pay for that subscription, you get unlimited searches, no risk trial, search anonymously. It means you can search as many people as you want, find out the information in the reports, and no one will ever know that you searched their information. This subscription allows you to search billions of public records throughout the United States, and it combines everything into one easy report. That report is going to include criminal record searches, bankruptcies, court records relating to civil matters, as well as property records. So if you're trying to find somebody to see if they have assets, you can begin with this process. You can search yourself to make sure basically your background is free and clear and there are no issues whatsoever with that. Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for your subscription. You will be satisfied. Next on the docket, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. What would Crime Talk be without these two in light of all the new information that's taken place over the last couple of weeks? As you may know, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you, the preliminary hearing for Lori Vallow is set for July 9th and 10th. Well, guess what? They are going to give Ms. Vallow her 15 minutes of fame. That's right. The preliminary hearing, the court has granted permission to news outlets to videotape the hearing in its entirety. Now, Chad Daybell also has a preliminary hearing on July 1st and 2nd, and that's right, he too is going to receive his 15 minutes of fame, well, actually maybe a day or day and a half, because the preliminary hearing will also be televised as well. This case is going to be interesting. I know I'm going to be watching it, and then when you get done watching it, come to Crime Talk, and we will talk about what it really means. Next on the docket, there was a sentencing in the Tessa Majors case. For those who are not familiar with this case, Tessa Majors goes off to New York City to start her freshman year at college. She is going to Barnard College, and she is apparently doing well, having a great time at college, getting good grades. She was originally from Virginia. Well, on December 11th, 2019, Majors was ambushed and stabbed just before 7 p.m. when she was walking down a staircase in a local park near the Barnard Columbia University campuses in Manhattan. People heard her screaming, "Help me, I'm being robbed." And ultimately, Majors stumbled up the stairs and collapsed in front of the security booth where she was ultimately rushed to the hospital. Now, the boy who was sentenced today is a minor because he was only 13 at the time of the killing of Miss Majors. And this 13-year-old boy told on his friends, Rashawn Weaver, who was 14, and Luciano Lewis, who was also 14, and they're being tried as an adult. The 13-year-old boy that was sentenced today stated that young Mr. Weaver allegedly dropped a knife, and the 13-year-old boy then picked it up and handed it back to him, whereupon he stabbed Miss Majors. The 13-year-old had told authorities that he had handed the knife to Weaver and saw him stab Tessa Majors. He saw feathers coming out of her coat after she had been stabbed. And after stabbing Miss Majors, they stole her cell phone. Weaver and Lewis face charges of second-degree murder. However, they're still being held in juvenile facilities pending their trial. Once convicted, they'd be transferred to an adult detention facility and ultimately prison if they are in fact convicted. But as always, we'll give them the presumption of innocence. At the sentencing today, the parents of Tessa Majors were less than happy. In fact, they stated they were furious with the outcome. Her parents stated that on Labor Day weekend of 2019, they dropped her off at Barnard College in New York to begin her freshman year of college. 100 days later, they brought her home in an urn. The parents expressed anger at how, they say, the negotiated parsing of language of the plea deal poignantly observes use of the word murder. Their parents stated that if you had read the description of the events put out by the defense attorneys, it would sound as though Tess Majors was involved in an accident. Her mother made sure to let everyone know Tess Majors did not die in an accident, that she was in fact murdered. And it was simple as that. No amount of semantic gymnastics changes the fact that it was in fact murder. Obviously, losing a child has got to be one of the worst things a parent could ever have to deal with, let alone a child that was in fact murdered. For what? A cell phone. Everyone needs to start putting a value on human life, and you don't get to take things from other people just because you want them. You didn't earn it. You didn't work for it. You don't get to take it. It is that simple. Next on the docket, a massive arrest of alleged child deviant offenders. That's right. The state and federal authorities on Tuesday night engaged in a sting operation that resulted in the arrest of 16 people who possessed and distributed photography of minors. Let's just put it that way. Frankly, this is a little too graphic for YouTube, so perhaps we'll discuss it on our Patreon page one time so that, we don't offend anybody. Anyway, Operation Guardians of Innocence 5 arrested 16 of these alleged deviants. And what is shocking to apparently the people involved in the case, but not to this guy, 2 of them worked at Disneyland. We've talked about this before. Why would they be at Disneyland? Maybe because that's where the children are? Ladies and gentlemen, use some common sense out there. I know you can't say anything these days. You may offend somebody. But guess what? Nobody has the right to not be offended. People need to speak the truth. People just need to use common sense, and not saying you should use it for employment purposes, but that is the exact reason why you would want your subscription to People Finder. Check these people out. We're almost done with the docket, but before we do that, let's take another quick recess. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am telling you, Father's Day is rapidly approaching. I know you think, we got 3-4 more days? It's safe. It will be here before you know it. And what do dads want? Well, maybe a golf game, maybe a fine cigar. But on top of that, what do they want? Cool stuff. And what could be more cool than the TC1200 tactical flashlight? That's right. Can't think of a whole lot more. All right. This thing lights the darkness up. It is perfect gift, not only for a Father's Day gift, but for you. It's the type of thing that you can keep in your purse. You can put it in the console of your car. You can put it in the glove box of your car. You can carry it with you if you're going on a walk. You can keep it with you if you have an emergency in your car. You can have it handy if there's a power outage or if, in fact, you go camping. The reality of it is it's better to have a good flashlight and never need it than to need it and not have it. This is your opportunity. Go to the link, Crime Talk search /1TAC, and you can get it. You can get it for up to 75% off, and you are helping Crime Talk because we're helping our sponsors. Don't let me say to you the day after Father's Day next week, I told you so. You should have ordered it. Order it now so it arrives on time. You will be completely satisfied. Next on the docket, attorneys making some really bad choices. First, a former California attorney is convicted of strangling his ex-wife, throwing her body overboard on a cruise ship, and now he has been convicted and faces life in prison. Some of you probably have been following this case over the years, but Lonnie Concoctus, 62, has now been convicted of killing his then 52-year-old wife, Mickey Kanaski, in order to inherit about $1 million as well as being the beneficiary on several bank accounts. The jury only deliberated for about an hour before convicting Mr. Concoctus. The jury concluded that it was first-degree murder with special circumstances because of the financial gain. Now, the jury was satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that Concoctus and his wife flew to Spain and boarded the cruise ship on May 21st of 2006. 4 days later, the couple took a day trip to the town of Messina, Italy, and then they returned to the ship. His wife was last seen on the ship around 11 p.m. Prosecutors alleged, and now have proven, that Concoctus strangled his wife later that night, then threw her body overboard. He later reported her missing and returned to California on May 27th. That same day, his wife's body was found floating on the coast of Paola, Italy. Now, it appears as though the defendant thought he may have committed the perfect crime. He boarded the cruise ship, he made sure that he had a balcony room on the cruise ship, and in the middle of the ocean, he tossed his wife overboard after he had in fact killed her. But he made a huge mistake because the physical evidence showed that his wife was strangled and didn't die from a drowning. Why, you may ask? That's right, because she couldn't breathe in water because she was dead long before she had been thrown into the ocean. And the police were able to determine that the cause of death was in fact asphyxiation, not drowning. Concoctus chose the ship, he chose the balcony room, and now the jury has decided his fate. Sentencing is now set for September 18th. Now we have a two-part section here today of attorneys making poor decisions. And this actually comes from the great state of Colorado. A Colorado defense attorney is accused of shooting a driver in the back of the head after the man drove through a protest protesting the death of George Floyd. Now, full disclosure, I do not know James Marshall, and we will give him the presumption of innocence. He's 27, so he's a young attorney. Well, he's charged with second-degree murder because it's alleged that he shot Danny Von Pruitt, 49, in Alamosa. According to police reports, Pruitt was driving a black Dodge Ram pickup through an intersection on a green light as protesters were in the crosswalk in the city of about 9,000. Alamosa is a nice little town. Spent 3 weeks there doing a trial last year. Apparently, witnesses told police that Pruitt came to an almost complete stop before inching forward toward protesters and then continued through the intersection. It's then alleged that Mr. Marshall fired a gun into the rear of the truck's cab, wounding Pruitt. Pruitt, who's originally from Canyon City, Colorado, continued to drive and was ultimately found parked about 10 blocks away. Pruitt is described as a disabled veteran and a single father and is being treated for swelling on the brain, but apparently is stable and will make it. Then, according to police records, Marshall and his wife and his lawyer were waiting for the police as they arrived at his home. And Mr. Marshall allegedly told an officer that he and his wife started crossing the street when traffic was stopped at a red light. He said he fired because he thought the truck had hit his wife and was afraid she was going to be run over, according to the statement made by Mr. Marshall. Once again, surveillance video from a nearby business showed that the truck apparently did not come close to hitting his wife. It was also noted that Marshall no longer had the beard that he had been seen with under a mask at the protest. He apparently stated that he was just simply going to shave if he had to go to jail. He was released on bond after posting a $60,000 bond. Now, at a full disclosure, Mr. Marshall's attorney is an attorney by the name of Randy Canny. I know Randy Canny. He is probably one of the best attorneys that I know. He basically semi-retired down in the Salida area, which is near Alamosa, and very, very good attorney. Mr. Marshall is in good hands, but Mr. Canny may not be able to fix all of the poor mistakes that have allegedly been made. Next on the docket, our dumb criminal contestants of the day. And once again, we have a duo. Meet Elizabeth Livers and John Robert Gray. This Kentucky couple was arrested for felony child abuse after taking pictures of Livers' 2-year-old son smoking pot. Now, what have we said about this, ladies and gentlemen? The dumb criminal of the day always provides us with a teachable moment. What have we said about documenting your criminal activity? Not a good idea, all right? In today's world, there's surveillance just about anywhere. But when you photograph your own criminal activity, you meet the qualifications for dumb criminal contestant of the day, as Miss Livers and Mr. Gray have done. So according to the police, Mr. Gray and Livers showed up to the store where they had dropped off some film for developing, and the individual that was developing the film saw the photographs and reported it to the police. Both of our dumb criminal contestants told the police that yes, in fact, the item in the pipe that the 2-year-old was smoking was marijuana, and needless to say, the child and the other child in the care of these two dumb criminal contestants have been removed from the home. So at least some good came from this stupidity. Honestly, I still have to wonder, since it is 2020, who still gets their film developed? Needless to say, they are certainly at the top of the running for the dumb criminal contestant of the week. Let me know what you think. All right, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everyone for watching our live program last night. You can watch that if you missed it. I want to thank all of our Patreons who we met with after our live show and had a very good interaction. Lots of people from our Patreon group watching, asking questions, and hopefully I didn't go on too long answering those questions. However, our Patreons really, in fact, do put their money where their mouth is and support Crime Talk, so we want to thank them. We here at Crime Talk want to thank everybody for watching. We know that you have lots of options to choose from, and the fact that you choose to watch us is very humbling and is not unappreciated. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on Crime Talk.